Come on, baby. Come on. So is there a carburetor in this or something? Come on, baby.
Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 225. That must be some sort of a milestone. For the 10th of February 2013. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia, where a big storm is just about to hit. According to the weather radar and listening outside, the rain is just about to start pelting down. Time to batten down the hatches. But before I do that, I better tell you about this week's Skeptic Zone. I catch up with Penny Chan, our reporter from Long Beach in California. Now, just recently, Penny went to Hong Kong to visit some family. Did she discover any any alternative type treatments? Well, to lessen the suspense, yes, she did, and she tried a few. That report coming up at the top of the show. Following that, we have a little teaser trailer for a very worthwhile project going on at the moment called An Honest Liar, a documentary about the amazing Randi and how you can help, coming up soon. After that, Maynard's Spooky Action. Maynard chats with Ben Newsome, the director of a wonderful science outreach program here in Australia called Fizzics Education, spelled Fizzics. Fizzics Education, science shows and educational products with a real wow factor, it says. And after that, Maynard catches up with pub goers here in Sydney, Skeptics in the pub, and asks the big question. The big question this month is, what do you think intuition is? What is intuition? I've often wondered myself. Find out what pub goers think intuition is, and oh yes, I just heard a big crack of thunder outside. Now, listeners in Australia might have seen an article about psychics in the weekend newspaper. Psychics in the Suburbs, I think it was called, something like that, where I'm quoted and James Randi and Chrissy Wilson and Chris French are all quoted. Oddly enough, they described me as having a square jaw, and I've copped no end of ribbing about that comment ever since. I'll put a link to that article about psychics in the suburbs, people who think or claim they can talk with the dead. I'll put a link to that item on the show notes, or you can just Google Sydney Morning Herald Good Weekend. A quick correction brought to me by my friends in Canberra. I said that there'd be a pub meeting on the 12th. That's not true. That's something else going on the 12th, not a Skeptics in the pub. But if you're in Canberra, please go to www.canberraskeptics.org.au to find out when their Skeptics in the pub is and other free lectures. I know there are some coming up very soon. But now it's time for me to before I run downstairs and look for something to drink or eat or whatever, a little odd thing at the beginning of the show with Maynard trying to start a car engine. I wonder if that's got something to do with solar flare. I wonder. All right, enough hints. I will run downstairs and batten down the hatches. And what should I have? What do sailors have at sea to batten down the hatches? Rum. I'll have a little glass of rum while you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
Here's Penny Chan with a penny for your thoughts.
And joining me on the line from beautiful Long Beach in California, the land I dream of, Penny Chan. Hello, Penny.
Hi, Richard.
It's good to see you because, for the benefit of our listeners, we are actually looking at each other now. We're video conferencing. It's fantastic.
You can see into my brand new kitchen.
Oh, I can see your brand new kitchen. And what are the...
Quite minimalist. Doesn't match the rest of my house, but I showed the cleanest room in my house, so...
So I'm interviewing you from your kitchen. How appropriate. The Skeptic Zone is always after noms. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and I'm right by my fridge, too, as you can see. There's not a lot in it. But...
Listeners, you don't know what you're missing out on. It's a wonderful, brand new, sparkling kitchen complete with fridge. And Penny's there in her stripy red top, looking fantastic.
Thank you.
Now, Penny, it's been a little while since the Skeptic Zone's caught up with you, and I'm delighted to say that you too are taking part in our secret project Solar Flare, which is very exciting.
Oh, yeah, top secret. Ooh.
And you've heard a little a sneak peek of it.
Yeah.
And I think you thought it was a very interesting project indeed, but more about that in a few weeks. But now, since we've heard from you last time, you've had a very interesting time indeed. You went to Hong Kong, and I must say the last time I was in Hong Kong, I think I was about 4 years old, way back in 1969, so I don't really remember too much about it. What were your impressions of Hong Kong, and why did you go there?
It's where my dad is from, and in December I graduated from university. As a graduation gift, my dad said, "Hey, would you like to go to Hong Kong?" So I said yes. I went, and I had a fantastic time. It was 10 days there. I saw all the sights. There's so much to see. It's a wonderful, wonderful city. It's got such a huge population crammed into a very small area. So I will say it was quite crowded, but a good place. I mean, I had a really good time. It was really interesting. It's a place that is really a good place to explore a lot of alternative medicinal practices, shall we say?
Well, I guess yeah. I shouldn't sound too surprised, because we always hear about things like Chinese traditional medicine or herbal medicine and things like this, but I've never really been in a place where it's been everywhere, and I guess Hong Kong is sort of like that.
Yes, and what's interesting is that it is one of the most modern cities on the planet. It's up there with Los Angeles, New York, and London, and Sydney. So it's very, very modern in every sense possible. It's actually really gorgeous there. The infrastructure and the buildings and the transportation is amazing. The public transport it really makes me feel ashamed of how crappy the metro line is here in LA.
You should try it here in Sydney, I tell you what.
Isn't that bad?
Well, it could be better. Oh, yes, and some of those trains aren't air-conditioned in the summertime. But let's get back to the real topic of the conversation. Being in Hong Kong, what did you experience in the way of interesting, can we say traditional or can we say New Age sort of practices?
Okay, well, I don't want to, make a big generalization and say, everybody in Hong Kong is so superstitious. People will not outright ignore modern medicine practices. They will go to the hospital if their leg is broken or something, but they put equal stock. Many people, for example, the people that I stayed with there, I stayed with family when I was there, mostly, and they put an equal stock in. It's not alternative to them. For example, let me be clear what I mean by alternative. Herbal medicine, things like acupuncture, massage therapy, reflexology, they are just as willing to turn to that as they would to modern, what we would say medicine practices. I did have the opportunity to go with my cousin so she's been having, for example, she's had this persistent cough for the past few years, just this, kind of chesty, throaty coughing that's been bothering her. And she says that her modern Western-trained doctor is not able to help her. So for the past few months or so, she's been going to see a guy, I don't know what the English word for it is. It's not bone setter, it's this guy who, okay, so we went to this house, on the outskirts of town, and it's this apartment on the lowest floor, and this old man has this, front reception office, and back in the back room, there's a bed and there's charts on the wall with, acupuncture meridian charted out. And then there's a bed, and then next to it on the table, there's like a bottle of brandy. I'm like, oh my God, what's going to go on here? And she's like, no, just watch. So she gets on the bed on her stomach, and he starts to like twist her arm and shoulder back, and she's squealing and screaming, and I'm like, I can barely watch. Like, hey, don't hurt her. And he's like, no. They're like, no, it's okay. And he's fixing her. Like, it looks like it hurts. And she's like, yes, it hurts, but it's good for me. I'm like, oh no. So after about 5 minutes of that, of her just like, and I'm like, stop. She came out, and he handed her some of these round green pills that are basically, herbal remedies, and she just swallowed them. She's like, so yeah, I go in and he twists my arms up into a pretzel, and then he gives me these pills, and I feel better.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, okay. Good.
Well, I can't quite see the connection between twisting somebody's arms and green pills and a cough.
And I noticed that she kind of still coughs a little bit, but whatever makes her feel better, I guess. So that was my first experience with that. My other cousin said, Penelope, if you're interested in trying some of this stuff, our whole family goes to this one clinic in the middle of the city. They're very, very good. They're very reputable. They're trying to reassure me that they're not going to just like give me some infection from their acupuncture needles when I'm there. It's like, oh, okay. So I did a little more research into this and to see what I could do. Because the thing is, I think I went about it the wrong way, because I wanted to try at least one of these alternative therapies while I was there. But, we have it here, cupping,
yes.
where they give you big bruises from the vacuum cups. And then a thing that I've never heard of called guasa, which is where they take a tool with a rounded edge, such as a $1 coin, and they basically push it hard into your back and your neck and your shoulder blades until you get these tiger stripe bruises.
Ooh.
This practice actually originated in Vietnam, but it's also popular in Hong Kong. And so the bruises left by the guasa, similar to the cupping, the darker the bruise, the better. And somehow bruising, as the bruises fade, it's better for your blood. And will cure things like flu. But I hear differing things from wherever I hear. Like so bruises are helping something, and everybody's like, yes, the bruises are a good thing. So I'm like, I wanted something dramatic looking like that, and then I realized I'm going about it the wrong way. Like, I can't just go into a clinic and say, give me bruises. I want something impressive looking when I come back. Be instead of a tattoo, just a bunch of guasa tiger stripe bruises. Wow. I'll do this the right way. I'll go into the clinic and I'll tell them what my problem is, and they'll tell me what I need to have. So I went in one day and I talked to a lady named Dr. Yan. I don't know if she's an actual doctor, but she wore a white coat and she was very nice to me.
Well, there you go.
And so it's like, the thing is, I'm quite healthy, actually. I don't have any huge problems. The only problem, I guess, is that I sometimes get bouts of acne pimples on my face. So I just said, that's my biggest problem, I guess. And she said, oh, yes, well, that's obviously a problem with your energy meridians and stuff.
No, really? Oh, wow. So that's it. Of course. I should have known when I was an adolescent that was the problem. Yeah.
All that time spent on all the expensive topical remedies. I should have just gone to the Vassar clinic. So I went into this very clean consulting room, and there's like a table there for you to lie down on. There's also, I saw baskets of these glass cups for the cupping, and I'm like, I kind of don't want that now. So she said, okay, here's what we'll do. I think the best thing for you is acupuncture, but don't worry, I'm a professional, I know what I'm doing, so we'll do that. And I said, okay, give it to me. So I've got pictures of that.
Really?
Pictures of my going, I don't want to do this. I'll pay someone to stick me with needles. So I laid down, and she put needles into my hands right here between my thumb and my index finger. Mm-hmm. That hurt, actually. I've heard acupuncture doesn't hurt that much, but she stuck them right into nerves. It felt like, make you kind of shudder, like, ow, ow.
Yeah.
Then she stuck them into each of my arms just below the elbow. Then she stuck one into each ankle. And then she started sticking them in my face.
Oh.
I could feel my heart rate going up. I mean, I wish I'd been hooked up to an EKG just for science reasons. Like, needles at my face. So she stuck, I think, 4 into my hairline, 2 in each cheek, I think 3 into my chin.
Wow.
And then she just said, all right, now you lay here for 20 minutes, and I'll be right here if you need anything, and after 20 minutes, we'll take them out. And that'll be it. So I just, laid there kind of with my hands on my chest, trying not to move, because when I move my hands, it hurt. Oh. So I'm like, this is weird. But yeah, my heart was beating the whole time. I could feel the panicky hormones kind of coursing through me. But after a few minutes, she took them out, and I left. And my skin problems are, they're not worse.
Well, you're looking okay to me. I can't see any problems at the moment.
Oh, thank you. Well, I put on a little makeup before I turned on my computer, so so that was. Now I can say I've done acupuncture, so no one can say to me, "Don't knock it till you've tried it."
Good for you. It reminds me of my good friends, our good friends at the Ono, Ross and Carey podcast, who do all these crazy things.
Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was there. I was like, why am I doing this? Ross and Carey already did it. But yeah. So that was my adventure. I didn't just try acupuncture. I also went in for reflexology twice. It was more of just like a very long foot massage.
Oh, well, that's all right.
But I thought it was supposed to hurt more, but it didn't. It was quite nice. I also did a thing I've never heard of before called Tibetan foot steaming.
Tibetan foot steaming? It almost sounds like a new age pop group, doesn't it? Here they are, Tibetan foot steaming.
Actually, to me, it was more like an interesting dish that you have. Basically, it's just a pedicure salon. It was quite nice. Look at this very lovely, nail salon. But they have you change into these silky pajamas, and then you lay down. You sit down in these cushy chairs. But then they stick your bare feet, into these big buckets. The big wooden buckets up to your knees, and attached to the bottom of the bucket is this hose, and the hose is hooked up to basically what looks like a rice cooker.
What?
Yeah, it creates steam, and then they put a sachet of medicinal herbs into I think the bucket, and then they cover your knees up with a towel, and somehow the herbs in the steam goes into your feet through the steam, and it's supposed to be detoxifying. And
now, isn't that interesting? Because, of course, we hear a lot about these foot patches that you put on your feet to draw out the toxins. You're telling me you have a treatment that puts things in to draw out the toxins.
So which is it? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was highly recommended, so I tried it, and, it was very relaxing, and I don't know.
You got clean feet afterwards.
Got very clean, softened feet, but yeah, they give you a menu to whichever problem you've got. There's a sachet of medicinal herbs for each problem, and no, I just chose the detoxifying one because I'm like, I don't know. I don't have any arthritic problems, though I don't know what a foot steam would do to help. But I don't want to knock it too much because I honestly did ask my friends and family there for their best opinion on what to do. And they showed me the best places. So it was a good experience. I'm glad I tried all these stuff. I had a good time trying, except for the...
Well, it's a very important point, Penny, because you're right. A lot of people will say to us when we're talking about something that we don't think has much credibility, well, don't knock it until you try it. You haven't tried it yet. You don't know what you're talking about. Now, I have tried lots of weird things over the years, so it's good to know that more people like you are getting out there. And even if we think we have this preconception that it's one thing, well, we can say honestly we gave it a shot. And we should try to give these things a shot with an open mind and see where they get you. So I'm glad you did that, and I hope you try some more wacky and crazy things.
Oh, I do intend to. And one of these days I'm going to try the cupping. I want to see how dark the bruises can be. Oh, yeah, and about that, I was asking my cousin about that, he's tried it a lot of times there. And he said that the darker the bruise, the better. But what's interesting is that he has recently started taking his health very seriously, and he started actually exercising. So when I was asking him about the cupping, he said, well, you can try the cupping. It's very good for you. He assured me. It's good, but don't rely on it. If you really want to get healthy, you must exercise, and you must eat healthy. Don't eat a lot of junk food. Don't drink a lot of soda. Drink tea, drink water, and, eat lots of leafy green vegetables, and start jogging every day, or do yoga or something. That is even better than the cupping. So I'm glad that he's recommending this, it's as highly, the healthy lifestyle is just as good as the cupping. So it's interesting, and which is actually the mentality of quite a lot of Chinese people, I would say, because they don't try to just rely on these remedies. They try to rely more on a healthy lifestyle, more about preventative medicine. So
yeah, well, I wish more people in the first world would think that way and get out there, and I certainly try my best to do what I can in that respect, and I think it's good advice no matter what culture you're in.
Exactly. It was a good lesson.
Penny, what a wonderful treat it is to catch up and see you again. And please give my best to your dad, a good friend.
Oh, I will. Oh, and I did want to give a quick shout out for Susan Gerbic. She's told me recently that there's been a bunch of excellent stuff recently on the guerrilla skepticism front. She asked me to just tell everybody that go to her blog. A lot of stuff's been happening recently there. They're still doing their translate the wiki pages into all languages possible.
Yes, a great project.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. They have a very excellent Portuguese translator right now, and he's done some great stuff on the Eric von Daniken and the Indigo Children pages.
Ooh.
So check that out. Well, if you speak Portuguese, it might be more meaningful to you, but no, it's important nonetheless. The Dutch and Russian translators have done some great stuff recently, so check that out, listeners.
Check that out, listeners. There'll be a link in this week's show notes. Penny Chan, I hope we can see each other in a couple of months when the amazing meeting rolls around again.
Oh, yes, of course.
And by that time, everybody will know about Solar Flare.
Mm-hmm. Solar Flare! Can't wait.
Penny Chan, a penny for your thoughts. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Richard.
Skeptic Zone listeners. Do you know what to do in August? Come to Stockholm, Sweden and meet astronaut Christer Fuglesang, activist Hailey Stevens, stats guru Hans Rosling, undercover health journalist Anna Bessén, and many more at the 15th European Skeptics Congress. Friday the 23rd to Sunday the 25th of August in Stockholm, Sweden.
The 15th European Skeptics Congress. www.euroskepticscon.org www.euroskepticscon.org
My father only spoke to me twice in my entire life. Perhaps it was because I was born out of wedlock. I was a bastard. I didn't go to school. I had free time to myself. So I went in to see a vaudeville show with Harry Blackstone. I saw him actually cause a lady to float in the air.
Who is the amazing Randy?
Where is the amazing Randy? Here he is, the amazing Randy.
Randy is an honest liar. He says he's going to deceive you, and then he does. I'm not going to tell you I have supernatural powers. I'm going to tell you I'm totally normal, which actually makes it more exciting.
He has managed to span several different worlds. He's not always the same thing.
He was a world-famous magician. He was really a kind of Superman.
Escapes from straitjackets, from burning robes over Niagara Falls, buried under the icy beat Houdini's record of being buried in a coffin.
Randy, you've been going around the country, somewhat as Houdini used to in the past, trying to debunk those who say that it's psychic power. You say it's magic.
People like Randy are doing a huge service by unmasking these fakes, mountebanks and charlatans. What you need is somebody who is an expert deceiver in his own right.
The great trinity of magic, skepticism, and science, I had not fully appreciated until I saw James Randi do his routines.
And I saw him on The Tonight Show when he did the thing where he debunked Popoff.
Popoff was allegedly hearing the voice of God, and he would go around his congregation and tell people amazing things about themselves.
You've got cancer of the stomach? Are you ready for God to burn that cancer out?
He had them come out of the audience and throw their pills up on stage.
Throw them up there.
And we discovered that the man was wearing, of all things, a hearing aid in his left ear. The man who heals the deaf and the blind isn't going to have much use for a hearing aid, one would think. We discovered that someone is sitting at a transmitter backstage.
Who is Harold?
What Randy did was to tune into the same frequency, and that allowed us to hear the voice of God.
Okay, she was at 4267 Masterson.
4267 Masterson, I can see the angels of God all around your house.
That's disturbing when you see it.
He breaks down the people he's uncovered as to as tight a degree as he can, showing all their methodologies and all of their tricks.
After your old tricks, I see.
Why not? I'm a charlatan.
This ability to figure out when someone's trying to fool you is of enormous value. And James Randi is the past master, perhaps the world's foremost authority on how to do that.
I am God.
The solution is rather simple. All of these people who say that they can speak with the dead are like vultures. Oh, no, that doesn't come out. I just ingested 6.5 days worth of homeopathic sleeping pills.
Do you believe in God?
Which God?
Or any God?
Any God? No, I don't. I don't have compelling evidence that convinces me there is a deity.
Gee, I bet you don't believe in the tooth fairy or Santa Claus either.
Well, I'm looking into Santa Claus. This is what I call home now, and I'm rather pleased with it, The neighbors are across the canal, so I'm sufficiently separated, and they're very, very happy about that, too.
Our pal, James Randi, scammed us out of lunch quite a few times. Here's how he did it. Randy, I had never considered the possibility that magic could be done morally. You didn't have to lie to do magic. It was a brand new idea. Yeah, I have said many times, I don't mind saying no Penn and Teller.
He is the most lovable, avuncular...
Are we there yet?
Gracious and generous, sweet granddad.
Which reminds me when I toured with Alice Cooper.
And yet, he pulls no punches when talking about his life's work.
See, I've always had my battle with the psychics, people who are stealing money from the public. Magicians don't lie to people. Magicians are the most honest people in the world. They tell you they're going to fool you, and then they do it.
Lies. Tell it by the fireside or in the marketplace or in a movie. Almost any story is almost certainly some kind of lie.
An Honest Liar, the amazing Randi story. For more information and to help this worthwhile project, visit www.anhonestliar.com. The Skeptic magazine, the journal from Australian skeptics. subscribe online to the world's second oldest skeptical magazine. Visit www.skeptics.com.au and click the publications link. You can also find there over 30 years of back issues free to download. The Skeptic, the magazine from Australian Skeptics.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Look, we're in the usual Skeptic Zone studio that we use here when we're at Skeptics in the pub, basically the hallway, but a bit of carpet, with our special guest. Who have we got this week?
Okay, I'm Ben from Fizzics Education. How you doing?
Look, Ben, I just came in at the end of it there because, I raced away from work and I saw you tipping water upside down and doing all sorts of things and explaining how kids just don't believe you. They almost think that there's a bit of magic going on sometimes when you try and teach them stuff.
Yeah, having magic as they come in. Oh, hang on, we got plates of dinner coming through. It's all good now. You're fine.
This happens every time we record here.
All right, it just makes me hungry. That's good. No, look, it's quite okay for kids to believe in magic in some ways, but I also want them to think about just the rational ideas of science as well. And so, if anything, it provides a talking point.
And where do you think they get the idea from magic from? Is it something that's innate in kids because they love to dream and imagine, or is it something that's brought to by books, Harry Potter, or television? Do you think it's just innate? Like, even if there was no outside stimulus, they would invent little magical things?
Yeah, it's part of growing up. Imagination is a key. It's part of the growth of their brain. I reckon it would definitely exist. Put them in a white room, they still think of things. It'd be interesting.
And what's the one that's hardest for you to dispel? You're trying to teach physics, which for me, physics is really hard maths for me, because once you get into the quadratic equations and things like that, that's actually where I lost my love of science, when mathematics became involved and it became very difficult for me.
Yeah, it's kind of like trying to single down on just one thing. Hardest one to dispel. I mean, being put on the spot, I would like to think about it a bit more. I think it's a collection. I mean, there's all sorts of things. I mean, didn't mention before, people hang on to taste buds being their different parts of your tongue, being sweet, savoury, sour. They can taste certain things, bitter and whatnot. And it's a complete fabrication based on a poor translation of a journal from about 1908 or 1904. I can't remember right now. But the idea was that this particular thing that you have an area of the tongue that only does sweet and that only, try it. Put salt, sweet and sour stuff on the tip of your tongue, guarantee you'll taste it every single time. It's put in primary science textbooks, the old ones, because it was a bad translation which was then replicated over and over and over and over and over again. And when we teach it at schools, we actually get the teacher kind of put in a funny situation because they've actually gone and taught that thing. And usually they will say to us, hey, we've done this taste test experiment thing, and I'm telling you now, I can't get it to work. And I go, you know why? Because it doesn't work. And that's the thing. It's it's really easy to dispel because you just get some sugar, some salt, and some citric acid, and you put it on different parts of your tongue, and I guarantee you'll taste it on each spot. But they don't let that. They ignore their observations in the face of what they're reading in the book or the dogma in the science teaching of their school. So that. It's easy as to get rid of the myth, but that just popped into my brain. But it just shows there are many things out there that we take for granted that may not be true.
And like I said, with me, the difficulty with mathematics is what killed my enjoyment of physics and chemistry. I remember the one specific thing about chemistry that killed my interest in that science was getting my head around valency levels. There was something about valency levels in chemistry when they were teaching it to me. Again, probably because that's a little bit mathematics-like to me. And that's what killed it for me. And what is the thing with kids you see at the younger age that makes them get a disconnect with science and go, oh, that's a bit hard?
You know what? I think they're fine till about year 6. I think the issue is that people try and make it too complicated rather than just teaching for the innate, just what's actually occurring in this experiment. I think the scientific method needs to be embedded right on, early. Like, I don't even care if they're preschool. It doesn't matter. You can teach it. We do teach it as that. But the thing is that when they hit year 7, and this is what does turn kids off of science, there's plenty of journal articles supporting this, the job of a science teacher is to give them the safety rules, and it's critical. You've got to do it. You also have to go through what the scientific method is, and these kids think they're coming from having watched cartoons or the stories about what might happen in a high school science lab, and now they're boiling water. And now they're doing something simple with paper and something else. It's not the slime and explosions and the mad science that they really truly thought was going to happen, because you've got a rational science teacher trying to teach them the scientific method. And so they're given a myth which doesn't occur in high school. And so, yeah, I know.
And then do you think some of the popular science shows, even the good ones like Bango's A Theory and Mythbusters, sort of pander that a bit because they're almost always blowing things up because that's good on TV, and that is indeed part of physics, but people might come to expect a little bit much out of high school physics?
It's really tough because as a teacher you've got to be an entertainer too, otherwise you lose your audience, which is your kids. Now, you kind of have to propagate some of that myth because you want to make it interesting and make it lively and all the rest. Some kids need that myth around it to keep them engaged, whereas other kids like it for the innate beauty of what's going on from the scientific point of view. And so, when you see things in sitcoms and whatnot, of course, propelling the idea of a mad scientist is a classic example and annoys a lot of really high-end scientists about this. It really does. But the reality is that these kids believe this, and you know what? It's tough, but if that means you get just a little bit more interested to listen to you about how the world works, you'll use it a little bit, and then you get rid of that myth later.
Now, for our American listeners, who their educators in some states on a daily basis have to have a debate with creationists, and there's pressure to put that into the school books, is there anything like that in Australia, in this country, in any of the educational curriculums?
All right, so the curriculum set by the Board of Studies of New South Wales, which is a state in Australia. Now, teachers, thou shalt follow that to the book. You have to do it. I mean, the reality is, though, there's also Islamic schools, there are Christian schools, there are schools of many faiths, and they are allowed by process to teach their faith. They're a religious school.
Now, would Catholic schools, because they'd be one of the major private ones in Australia, would they be able to teach creationism?
Yes. Now, they have to teach science alongside it because it's part of the syllabus. And so the job of a science teacher in an organisation like that is to say, here is a theory. And evolution is a theory. It's held up by evidence. However, it's still called a theory because it's not an outright law yet to the nth degree. And it's the same thing with Big Bang Theory and whatnot. And so given the evidence, say the good thing about this particular theory is that it's measurable, and here are the evidence points. And so you have to, and this is actually a job as a teacher, to say, I'm in a science room, we're going to teach the scientific view of how the world works. Here is when you're talking about the law of thermodynamics, you say it's a law, and this is how it's going to be. This is how it works. And the kid can say it could be God or whatever he wants to think. Now, when it comes to creation or evolution and all that sort of debates, you say, this is the scientific headspace that we're coming from. Here are the evidence points. You make your own rational thought around this, and we leave it at that. Because you can't say it's a law yet. They tell you what, we say, gee, it's a pretty good theory because here are the points that are pretty almost irrefutable, but you still got to call it a theory because scientists haven't called it a law yet.
Now, your job would be one of the most difficult ones on the planet. Any educator has a difficult job from time to time. And I always like, when I'm interviewing people, to ask them about something everybody that can take who doesn't do your job, something to help them through their everyday work. So when things are tough for you, when you've got a hard point getting the point across, when the kids are mucking up, when it's a hot day, when the air conditioning's broken in the classroom that was built in 1950s and it was supposed to be a demandable classroom back then, how the hell, to invoke a biblical reference there, do you get through the day and through the class and get it across to the kids? I mean, where do you dig down to? I mean, like athletes have a special place they dig down to make it across the line. How do you do that as an educator? Because it's not you've got to bring across the line. You've got to bring these 30 kids with you.
Bag of tricks and a cup of coffee. pretty much.
Yeah, what's in a bag of tricks of an educator?
Well, I mean, I've actually been thinking that casual science teachers should actually have a box with just some stuff, which is pencils, straws, string and balloons, and some simple things that is a go-to box when
how about some potassium so they can just drop it in some water? Hey, kids, don't you like that?
Yeah, it's a bit of they won't let you do that anymore. It's a bit of
what?
Yeah, but you should have some. Hold back some experiments that you don't want to do unless it's one of those days. That's what you do, and you know what? You just have to step up. Simple as that. I mean, imagine if you're a neurosurgeon and you're having a bad day, whatever's going on, and the last thing you want to be doing. I mean, you're gonna have to step up, and that's no choice. And so there's a thing. So you got a class of 30 kids there. Some of them are recalcitrant. That's going to be the case, and some of them are going to be loving what you're doing. But on a tough day, it is a tough day, and you accept it, and you choose an experiment which it might be off topic for a little bit. But what the hey? I mean, you got 5 minutes. What the harm is it going outside on a hot, windy day and doing some bottle rockets, water rockets, because you know they're going to like it. But you're off topic for a little while. But guess what? They're all listening to you again.
And do you think it's a good thing to have animals in the classroom, like have the guinea pig or have the rat that's in the classroom that the kids keep or look after? Do you think that teaches them about life and about the life cycle of animals, that everything lives and dies? Do you think that's a helpful thing, or it can be a bit distressing when the animal sometimes carks it?
All right, now I know where you're going with that. I think that's actually a good idea. I mean, some kids actually have never seen a seed grow. Some kids have never seen a chicken hatch out of an egg. And now, having that around is not a bad idea, as long as they treat you humanely, and when they die, they die, and if they need help, they need help from a veterinary point of view, absolutely. But it is a cycle of life. They're going to be exposed to it anyway. You might as well be exposed to it with a guide.
And one last question, I always like asking this one. What do you reckon musically is the best thing to introduce kids to science? They Might Be Giants had that great science album that everyone loves quoting.
I was going to say that.
I think Here Comes Science was the name.
Yeah, it is. Well, guess what? That was the one I was going to go to.
But nothing wrong with that.
But you know what? I mean, there's all the studies. Even like my little daughter was a premature baby, and then they've had studies in Israel about the effect of growth development with Mozart, or was it Beethoven, one of the two playing. Look, you know what? Anything with a melody and a rhythm can help mathematical ability.
You'd be talking Bacon there, the work of Kevin Bacon with Footloose. That's what you'd be talking about there.
Oh, I know. If it gets the kid to shake their hips, all good. But there's a multitude. I mean, from every different culture, there'd be something in there that's good for them. If it stimulates their brain and allows them to, increase their cognitive function, happy days.
And lastly, what's a good website that we can go to that's good for education, good for learning, and one that you'd recommend to us all? Absolutely.
I mean, it's a shameless plug, but our company website, Fizzics Education, spelled really badly, Fizzics, education.com.au. Fizzicseducation.com.au has over 100 free experiments you can easily do by going down to local shops and pick up the materials for a couple of bucks. It's just there and off you go. But if you type in free science experiments into Google, you'll find hundreds of websites. Just use your brain and make sure that you're not going to do something dangerous.
And what's your favourite household item you reckon's great for experimenting with?
Vinegar bicarbonate soda. Your room should smell like it. There's so many things you can do. You can do heaps of stuff. You don't have to do high-end stuff. You're missing the point. The kitchen chemicals can do the job too.
Here we are at Skeptics in the pub. Maynard here reporting, not far from the bar. There it is there. We're only one drink in so far, so anything could happen, ladies and gentlemen. We have Amanda here, who is a guest from the ACT, the Australian Capital Territory. She's crossed the border, had her passport stamped, and joined us here in Sydney at the Coronation Hotel tonight. Good evening.
Hi there.
Now, the big question we're asking everybody is, what is intuition? No, it's not a song by Stevie Wonder. There is intuition. I'm not walking down the street. Nothing like that.
And a song by Jewel.
And a song by Jewel as well?
Yes.
Wow, okay, well, there you go. Well, what do you think intuition is?
Well, it's funny because when we brought up the question, a lot of people think intuition is all magical and it's woo and it's everything like that. But I think it's partly about taking on from your experiences and being able to just sort of... I don't know, I think there's a sense about things that doesn't have to be magically based. It's based on, the way your brain works as well as what you experience in everyday life.
I'd take a stab at it and say it's a prediction of future events based on past ones.
I would probably agree with you a little bit, but we may need to have a beer to debate that further.
I think we may have now. Look, I know you also work for a federal department.
Yes, I do.
And you also work in the sort of the law federal department.
Yes,
so
I do.
I'm going to ask you a question about the FBI, which I know you've got nothing to do with. The Federal Bureau of Investigation. Okay, right. Now, and this actually came up, Jack Marks, the journalist, brought this up with me a few weeks ago. Mulder and Scully, right? They worked for the FBI, allegedly, in the X-Files. How come they still had their job when they never actually solved anything? They would get to the end of every episode and go, well, that was a bit spooky, and just get case closed, that's it. They never actually put in a report where they actually solved anything.
Well, that's a very good question, and I think I'll answer it in a couple of ways. One, because, well, they're not real.
Oh, you're giving me that fiction thing again, are you?
And two, what fun would it be? What would anyone tune into the next week episode if they solve the crime and then move on? But if you remember rightly, in the first season of X-Files, they actually started solving crimes, but then they got boring.
I know. Look, I like the first and second season because they were all internally consistent. And also the love interest too. Now, what if you had two people going at each other like rabbits, like they sort of were towards the end there? That wouldn't be a good thing in the workplace. But, okay. Well, I suspect that something would be said at a managerial level.
It'll definitely take away from the whole solving of the case. Hey, we probably just put our finger on why they didn't solve the case because they're too busy with the sexual tension thing going on.
Look, sexual tension ruins everything. Now, so what do you think about different sorts of intuition then? Like they talk about mother's intuition.
I think it's hokum. I think mother's intuition comes from the fact that they are so... That whole mother's instinct, that whole woman's intuition, that whole mother's intuition basically is by using the odd occasion where they may be right about the fact that their child's about to run into a window with the 20 other times where they haven't caught them in time when they fell off a chair. So they sort of name the logical fallacy.
Now, as a Canberra skeptic, and you guys are hosting the big Skeptics conference later in the year,
yes, we are.
What do you make of our Sydney gathering here tonight?
This is my first Sydney gathering, and it's very good actually. A lot of people who I'm just meeting for the first time who I've spoken to online. But I really enjoy the dynamic environment with alcohol.
I mean, how many times have we chatted on FetLife? So many times now.
Yes, we have, and it feels like I already know you.
I know, it's like that.
Yeah, but I think with the great thing about the skeptical movement is that people, it's like a community in a way. People come together from all areas of the country and all areas of the world, and you can not ever see them and not ever meet them. But the fact that we're all sharing ideas and we're all sharing the one common goal is to, seek the evidence, seek the truth, and sort of enlighten. I hate to use that word because it's a buzzword, but it sort of brings everyone together. So we all have that sort of thing where we can understand where we're coming from. So I'm really enjoying the evening.
Well, we're here in one of the busier corners, and I will have to apologise about the background noise because everyone's... I think they're doing a scene from The Hobbit behind us. It's fantastic. It's like a radio play. Now, you're over here in the controversial corner, in the bohemian corner. What is intuition, son?
It's pattern recognition. Essentially, you've seen it all before, so when you see something that looks kind of like it, you associate it with something you've already experienced.
So why can't older people pick up better than younger people?
Alzheimer's.
Well, I think that's your answer there. So have you got a bit of an idea what intuition is?
I don't know. There's stuff about we actually have more neural tissue in our gut than many species have in their brains. So it could be something of our gut brain speaking to our head brain.
Oh, okay.
That doesn't smell funny. That smells funny, so I'm not going to have anything of it.
Okay, that's not a bad idea there. And no, Jessica's still eating something. Now, what have we got over there in the corner? You got any intuition going on there?
Oh, intuition? No, intuition's just sort of experience and training.
There we go. Yeah, you and your smarty-ass theories.
That's right.
Now, look, you might have heard some loud people in the background of the last interview. Well, there's these guys here going off. What scene were you recreating from which Peter Jackson film? I was thinking it might have been King Kong for a moment. The scene.
God, don't tell me about. No.
See, but I'm a fan of the 80s Jessica Lange version or whatever it is, the one that was in the 80s King Kong one.
I much prefer the original.
Oh, well, fair enough then. Okay, well, before we figured out what exactly did kill the beast, and I suspect it was alcohol, what do you think is intuition? Yeah, what do you think it is?
Yeah, it's mostly bullshit.
Okay, well, what, you reckon people make it up after the fact?
Well, it's that classic thing. It's intuition if it comes right. If it's not, it was a guess.
And if it wasn't, it's a yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a pretty to-the-point answer. Now, what do you think? You agree with our esteemed colleague here?
It really depends on what you're calling intuition. If it's some sort of psychic ability, then no. But if you're picking up on subconscious cues and you're not aware of it, then you might be putting a picture together, which might turn out to be right. But
I'm sort of thinking of it as something you think's going to happen based on past experience. Is that intuition?
Well, if you know someone's going to cheat you, they'll probably do it again. Is that intuition or just common sense?
That's right. Now, is there such a thing as mother's intuition, women's intuition?
Again, it depends how you define it. If it's some special psychic ability, then no.
Look, you never hear about transsexual intuition, do you? That is never mentioned, and I think
that's going to the right bars.
I guess I'm not speaking to the right people, but I reckon that's just some sort of prejudice going on in our society. Let's go.
See that? I want to see transsexual intuition.
Well, there is gaydar.
Yeah, there is gaydar, but no, that's a different. Look, that's a question for another show. Look, I'm at the table nearest the bar, so of course you're going to find the usual suspects there. How are you this evening, sir?
I'm all right, thank you.
Now, have you had any intuition experiences lately? And could you give us what you think intuition is?
I can't say I've had any intuition experiences, but I understand intuition is your brain working on the subconscious level with information that it has and it has obtained through the senses. And I've heard it said that if you rely on your intuition, it's more reliable than what some people think.
Isn't it
actually relying on it's the brain still working in a normal way, but below the conscious. And I've heard people say that if you try to don't deny the intuition and sort of make reasoned decisions, which as a skeptic I would have thought it was the case. They've done experiments, and in some cases it's turned out worse than if people have followed their intuition. They've made the correct decision. But there's nothing supernatural or spooky about it. From what I understand, it's the brain actually crunching the information that it's absorbed over time. Well, I don't know. I could be wrong.
Okay, no, that sounds like a good working definition for me. And what about you, sir? You're smiling, you're laughing. Are you disagreeing with him? Is there some sort of... We've got an intellectual impasse going on here. What do you think intuition is, Mr. Greenshirt?
I think John is right that there is unconscious processing going on, but I think you have to be really careful. There's a lot of voices going for attention in your mind, lots of different thoughts, and instead of tuning into some very sophisticated unconscious reasoning, you could just be going into the last suggestion somebody gave you, or something you read on the newspaper, or just listening to your gut, as the Republicans would have it, or Stephen Colbert would have it. Doesn't always give you the right answer, so you've got to be careful you're not misled.
And so, do you think that effectively is what intuition is, but you might just hear the wrong thing?
Yeah. So I think that unconscious reasoning I think that's real intuition, but I think you can be fooled by suggestions given to you earlier. So you've got to... It's a skill, I think, an art, to be able to listen to the right voice in your head.
Well, I think we should have a listen to the voice of Peter. Hi, Peter, how are you? And first of all, how is your health? Like, a lot of the skeptics have been wondering how your health's been.
My health is fine. My health is fine. I still have a very sore ankle, which I broke last year at Skeptic Camp. I know now that I should stay away from things because I hurt my foot at TAM, I hurt my foot at Skeptic Camp, I hurt my foot at the Atheist Conference, and I fell over and hurt myself and couldn't march in the Mardi Gras. So I figured that God is telling me a message to stay away from these heathens and atheists and people like that.
Look, and we won't even let you know what happened to him when he went to Sexpo.
Oh, look, that's a different story altogether.
Well, maybe some intuition might help you here. What do you think intuition is, Mr. Break my foot every time I walk out the door?
I think it's basically what John was saying. It's an unconscious assessment of things that you know, and experience and background and so forth. You think that you are just basically guessing at things. I think most people are actually using some kind of evidence that they've gathered over time, but also it's correct that if you can be influenced by what people are telling you, what you've heard, where you are, the circumstances around you. I don't think that it's an invalid thing, but you just shouldn't rely on it all the time of saying, gee, it feels right. Like I used to be a gambler on the horses. I was actually reasonably successful at it, but I can guarantee you I never simply said, gee, I think that horse is going to win because I like the colour of the jockeys. So it was a matter of sitting down and working out where they'd run before, what the form was and so forth. There was no intuition at all. The intuition were the people who were throwing the money at the bookmakers and paying for the Bentleys. And the very small numbers that were making money. We might have one intuitive bet on a Saturday, and that at the end of the day, when you had a couple of bucks left in your pocket, and you'd say, yeah, why not? Yeah? I think it's a form of guesswork, but in most cases I think it's informed by your experience, your knowledge, and also what's going on around you at the time.
Look, and while I've got you here, Peter, too, we should give a big plug to a channel that most people that have got Foxtel don't even look at usually, and that's the public access channel that's on there, because one day I saw you on there. I saw you giving a talk to the Canberra Skeptics, and I didn't know what was going on. Look, they have stuff like that on there all the time. What was that channel, and what were you doing on Foxtel?
I've actually never seen that, but every now and then people send me emails saying, I just saw you on television. In fact, I got an email this week from a person who was in primary school with my brother, way back in the dark ages, who said, I saw you on television. It was a talk on the coming apocalypse. It was the last ever talk of Canberra Skeptics to be given before the end of the world on December 21st last year.
And I've just remembered that it's the APAC channel. It's the Australian Public Affairs channel. That's what it's called, APAC channel. And usually it's some think tank from the Menzies Institute or something, but occasionally you get some conspiracy people on there. It can go nutty. It's great.
Yeah, so I always get told about it after it was just on. And people say, we just saw you on television. I say, good, can you please actually ring me when I appear and let me know so I can rush to the TV and actually watch it. Yes, it was, they filmed, it was basically a talk I gave about the coming apocalypse and what was going to happen and not happen on December the 21st.
And did you have a big nya fest when it didn't happen? And who did you nya to?
I was that night with Western Sydney Freethinkers. We had a night out. We had to wait till the exact time that happened, which I think was 11 minutes past sometime in the night. And we all raised a glass to the end of the world, and because we'd all survived. But we were a little bit fearful about it. No, there's a bit of intuition there saying maybe it might, maybe it's right, but.
But that happens with every skeptic thing. There's just that little fraction of a percent that the aliens are going to land on the White House lawn, or that some astrology thing is going to be proven true, and then you're going to have to walk with your pants down around your ankle down Pitt Street for a bet.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I try not to make bets like that.
I make them constantly.
But yes, you're right. Actually, like as Richard said earlier, I would love to see some of this paranormal stuff. People said, how would you feel if an alien landed in your backyard? I said, I'd feel terrific, and I start selling tickets. But I live in the Blue Mountains where we're full of strange animals and panthers and things. If they find a panther in the Blue Mountains, I'm going to think it's terrific. I'm not going to think it hasn't destroyed my view of life. We've found something that we didn't know before. I'm not too sure about aliens landing, and I'm not too sure about astrology being proved true. But if it happens, it happens.
Now, look, I know Richard will probably cut this out, but here I go, because I know that, the alien hypothesis is just one. I go for the ultra-terrestrials, which has been, they've been here all the time. They just don't want to be seen from time to time. There's also the time traveller hypothesis, and there's also the other dimension hypothesis. See, I think thinking of just extraterrestrials, it's narrow thinking.
Well, I think it is. I mean, time travel is far more likely, or they're going to come out of the underground bases that live under the Blue Mountains where I live. But they're there now. They're just waiting. Are they
waiting for a decent bushfire to come through? What are they waiting for?
I think the decent bushfire, it's like the start of The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, right? Yeah. That they were watching. They were waiting. They were waiting for the right time to come.
I see. OK, well, while they're doing that, we might as well have a drink, Pete.
Sounds like an excellent idea.
I'm here with Iran. Now, Iran is a man who's very mysterious. He's actually working secretly with the Mossad, I believe, because I reckon you'd be the perfect plant. You'd be the perfect sleeper Mossad cell guy.
I'm sorry, I can't talk about it.
See, told you, I was right. Now, okay, but what about intuition? Iran, what do you think intuition is?
First of all, we have to assume that it exists, but I think some people do have a level of perception, a higher level of perception about things that could happen to people. So I don't think intuition really works when it comes to coming up with ideas about what might happen in nature or things like that. I think intuition is more about things that might happen to people. So I think, for example, parents very often have intuition about their kids. But it comes from familiarity. You know what your kids will do in certain situations. So So he said, I knew they were going to do it. Of course you knew you were going to do it. You've seen them in that situation 1,000 times before.
So do you think it is just merely a future, an extrapolation of what will happen in the future based purely on what you remember from the past? Is that all?
I think it probably is, but there's you develop a certain level of heuristics. You don't think about it too deep. You don't think about most things too deeply. You just come up with an idea. You have to make decisions very quickly. There's actually a book by Daniel Kahneman that talks about fast thinking and slow thinking, and this is the fast thinking part, where your brain doesn't make unconscious or subconscious decisions based on heuristics. And it's not with the full amount of information, and definitely without being conscious of all the information. You just make those decisions. And that's what basically, in my opinion, intuition is. Now, I'd love to quote Richard Feynman. Richard Feynman once talked about he was asked why quantum mechanics is so counterintuitive. So there is the intuition coming in.
Now, he also had the great quote that if you say you understand quantum mechanics, you don't
clearly
understand...
do not understand quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's why is quantum mechanics so counterintuitive? It's not just unintuitive, it's counterintuitive. It works against everything we know.
Well, I can answer that because obviously we are living in some sort of simulation designed by other people from another realm, and what we perceive as being normal stuff is normal stuff, but the actual quantum is what is powering the game, the hologram, the reality in which we live.
You forgot to mention that those who designed the game, they're also a simulation. But anyway, it's turtles all the way down.
But there's a great movie called Room 13 or Level 13 or something. Check that movie out. But continue on.
Yeah, so what Richard Feynman said was the reason it's so counterintuitive has got nothing to do with quantum mechanics. It's to do with us. We evolved intuition where intuition was developed through evolution by us learning to understand that the rustle of the leaves is either wind or an animal behind them, or stuff like that. We evolved intuition in the macro world that we live in. If we had evolved in a size that allows us to see what happens at a quantum level, we would be intuitive about that level. But we don't see that. We don't need to be intuitive about that. So intuition is those rules of thumb that have developed in us through evolution and experience and personal experience to simply make decisions very, very quickly.
Is there something from intuition that you know you won't do or get involved in? And I'm not going to. I mean, for me, drinking Lambrusca. That is something that, from intuition in the past, I know that drinking Lambrusca can often not end well.
Talk about my time at the Mossad, because you know what will happen if I do.
That's true, yeah, we could. Also, there's a certain time, I don't know, maybe when you were on the circuit, when you were dating around, because you're a damn good-looking man, when you were dating, there's a kind of person you know from one look not to talk to or even get involved with, even though they may seem very attractive and quite attractive. There's just something about them you know you shouldn't get involved with. Do you remember that day from when you were dating back in the day?
No. It's too long ago.
Well, we've got the youngest member here in the dinner section. What's your name?
Rebecca.
And how old are you?
I'm 12.
Okay, now in your 12 years on this planet, what do you think intuition is? Is there something that, what's the last time you went, I'm not going to get into that or talk to that person, and why do you think you thought that way?
Well, my friends told me, to not go in the back compartment of the train on the way home, because some people, weird people, don't look up at them, because then they might have the urge to come and talk to you. So,
don't make eye contact. That it's in The Simpsons, and it's actually true in life as well. There's some people you should back away from not making eye contact. That's good advice. Well, you got street smarts. Is there a certain vibe or something that they exude that you go, no, I better not?
Yeah, sometimes people just... It's in the way that people kind of move. You can kind of tell. You see them as a really outgoing person on the way they stand, or a really under the weather kind of afraid of life kind of person who's not really out there. And
or there's an emo person who's looking at the ground all the time and doesn't see anybody ever.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes people are like that, but...
That's okay. Look, intuition is very important, and I think you've got it.
Thank you.
Now we're here with our aeronautics correspondent for Skeptic Zone. Who have we got?
Mr. Robin Hilliard.
Robin, you're great. In fact, I think there isn't an episode of Flying Upside Down in the Plane Dying that you haven't seen. What about intuition? Would intuition play any part as a pilot?
I have experienced intuition myself of something being the intuition that something was wrong, and turned around and got a plane back to an airfield before the engine stopped. So
yes. So how did you know the engine was about to go?
I summed up all the things that were working okay and then rated that against the things that weren't going okay, and I thought that's not enough things going okay. So I turned around at that point. I think this is probably a good example. I mean, I've read the Malcolm Gladwell sort of books, and so I sort of have a bit of I've read a bit about this, and I sort of agree that intuition is that which you don't. It's a decision that you make subconsciously. Based on learned experience. There's nothing paranormal about it. It's probably more the neural networks in your brain just sort of triggering enough of a learned response and you paying attention to that without having come consciously to that decision yourself.
Now, if someone's flying a much more complicated plane like one of the new Airbuses or something like that, is there any room for intuition in that, or is everything just so looked after that you can't actually have intuition in a complex machine like that?
I think the pilots are there for the intuition, although sadly sometimes, like in the most recent Airbus crashes, they've sort of failed in that regard, very, very, very tragically. But no, I think that's why you're there, because at the end of the day it's a system, and the system can't get creative, and you need the intuition there to actually say, because it's because you have to make those. It's for the split-second decisions that you can't make in a system. It's like when they were doing the Hudson landing, and
the guy forgot to seal off the watertight compartment for the luggage, and he's the guy who used to train people to seal off the watertight compartment for the luggage, and he forgot to do it. I find that amazing. I mean, I imagine I couldn't do it, but why didn't he do it when that was
I could easily understand forgetting things or not realizing that something was happening. I realised there was a crash at Canley Vale a few years back where they had to get back to Bankstown because all of the other airports had been closed by property developers. But my crash was quite similar to them, except they had two engines and they had the unbelievable bad luck of two engines failing at the same time. But for me, all the instruments were actually saying that everything was okay, and it's only just summing up saying, no, but the aeroplane isn't climbing. At the end of the day, it's not performing, and nothing in front of me until later when things started definitely going wrong. Nothing in front of me told me anything.
The oil squirting on the windscreen, bit of a giveaway.
That was near the end.
You sure that was oil? You just weren't really scared?
No, that was definitely oil. The front seal burst very suddenly, and I was landing into the setting sun, so that was quite exciting. But it just made everything sort of like rosy haze, Vaseline sort of thing. It wasn't black. It wasn't like Bugs Bunny. But, yeah.
It's never boring with you, is it?
No. And I have to later on. I have to show you my photos from Pearl Harbor. I know because I went there. We went to Hawaii on the holidays, so you'll want to see some of my Pearl Harbor photos.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. And thank you once again for Maynard for lots of very interesting reports on this week's show. Of course, you can check out Maynard's other podcasts and activities at maynard.com.au, where he has some interviews with more people from Red Dwarf and Deep Space Nine, Star Trek. Now, that storm is still threatening to storm outside. I think I'm in the eye of the storm at the moment. It's a little bit freaky. Now, before I wrap up the show, visit www.rationalist.com.au to visit the Rationalist Society of Australia and find out about the upcoming tour by Sean Faircloth, Australia and New Zealand. More information at the Rationalist website. But for now, with heartfelt thanks to all those people who do chip in via www.skepticzone.com TV with $1 a week or a bit more. Thank you very much. It's people like you who help make the show possible. This is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.